I'm Brian Van, sportbiketrackgear.com, and today I'm going to show you how to bleed brakes on an ABS-equipped motorcycle. Okay, you know, at this point, ABS and motorcycling, they're still relatively new, especially in the sport bikes. Yeah, for a few years now we've had it out, but it's not as mainstream as it is right now. If you're buying a new bike, odds are it's probably going to come equipped with anti-lock brakes. A lot of us riders, we service our own braking system. We replace our own brake fluid, we replace our own brake lines, all those things. So you're going to need to know how to bleed the system just like you did on a standard non-ABS equipped bike. We're going to use a 2017 R6 that we're doing as a project bike to show you how to bleed the brakes. But here I'm going to give you the cliff notes right now. Are you ready? Well, it's really no different, okay? I'm sure there's an exception to that. I'm sure there's some BMW or some MV Agusta that's got some really weird bleeder screw tucked away somewhere on the brake pressure modulator valve. But with the bikes that I've encountered thus far, that has not been the case. It's the same practice. In automotive, all the experience I have in automotive previous to this, you would bleed the brakes just like you would any other brake system. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to do that. But before we jump into it, I'm going to talk about just a couple of things that I think are worth having when you're ready to do it. Speed bleeder bag and hose kit. We got these in stock, sell them on the site. This thing is awesome because flexible rubber tubing hooks to the bleeder screw. What this does is it helps prevent you from making a mess, from getting fluid all over your motorcycle. Because remember, that brake fluid, that stuff does not do well on sensitive surfaces. It can discolor, it can eat paint right off of things, so you don't want to let it sit. With that said, obviously you're going to make a little bit of a mess during this. Make sure you're ready with some shop rags, disposable. Have some cleaners ready. This Maxima stuff, I love it. I'm using it for so much stuff right now. Suspension clean. This is nice to clean up some of that brake fluid, that little bit of spill. It's not as harsh as standard brake cleaner. It'll get it off there. And then I like to come in when I'm all done with the project and hit those surfaces with something like SC1 or their Speed Wax, little microfiber. Just make sure that you're not going to damage the motorcycle throughout this. Bleeding the brakes. Remember, this is an ABS equipped motorcycle, so this is going to be how to bleed the brakes on a motorcycle equipped with anti-lock brakes. End of the day, it really does not differ very much from standard bleeding practice. I've already filled the front reservoir. That's new fluid from a new sealed container. That's very important. Reservoir is full. Remember, we have emptied this system completely when we put the brake line kit on. I am going to use a speed bleeder bag and hose kit. We sell these on the site. They're super cheap. You can use it multiple times, and I got to tell you, this really is a helpful tool because it allows you to do this without making a gigantic mess. The first thing that we need to do is establish some type of flow with the fluid, okay? We had emptied the system completely using that pressure bleeder. Okay, I'm sorry, the vacuum bleeder. So we sucked it out empty. One way to get the fluid moving would be to gravity bleed the brakes a little bit. Got the reservoir full. That is the high point. I now have the bleeder screw open on one of the calipers. Take your time here, right? Let a couple of minutes pass with this all hooked up. You want to keep an eye on it and let it sit until you see some fluid moving. That's one way to do that. Another way would be to get your bag attached like I already have it, right? You don't have to have this, but it just makes the job a lot cleaner. What I want you to do is, bleeder screw is closed. Open the screw, pull the brake lever in a bit, hold the lever, close the screw, release the lever, open the screw, push, tighten, release. And I don't know if Steve can get this or not, but you'll see that I've got fluid beginning to move right now. You can repeat this process, and I'm not taking it all the way to the handlebar, just part way through the stroke in the master cylinder. repeat this until you see some fluid moving. You can see right there, I got a little bit of fluid, okay? Now I'm getting a lot of fluid. If you look at the level on the master, you'll see that that has dropped considerably. What this tells me is we now have fluid flowing. Now that I've got fluid movement, I'm going to come up to the bleeder screw up here at the master. I'm going to do the exact same thing that I was doing down at the calipers. I know that when somebody watches this video, they're going to come in here, well, you should have started at the screw in the top. And I can see why someone would think that, but you need to consider this. The braking system was dry as a popcorn fart because I sucked all of the brake fluid out of it. So if we try to begin up here, knowing that the entire system is nothing but one gigantic air pocket downstream, that is not going to be effective. Begin at the bottom, get fluid moving, then come up to the master cylinder and get fluid moving there. From here, I'm going to come down and begin to work at the calipers again, but you can see we need to address the low fluid level before I do that. Okay, at this point, I've filled the fluid level. It's a little over full, but don't worry about that. We're going to push some of that out. Now let's see if we have a lever. Check that out, okay? Just with what we've done, I already have a reasonable lever. That is not a good finished product. I know there's still air in the system, but nevertheless, that is a great start. So now we're going to alter the bleeding process a little bit. Instead of just opening the screw and pulling the lever in and holding it, I'm going to pump it a couple of times while the screw is closed. I will then hold the lever, open the screw, while holding the lever, tighten the bleeder screw again. We'll repeat this process. A little bit of air still. I'm going to do this one more time on this caliper, and then I'm going to move over to the other side. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing at the master. Pump it a couple times, hold it. Go ahead and repeat the process. That is free of air at the master. And that's a really solid stock lever. All right, you get a little more feel out of a Brembo, but for a stock master, just a stock Nissan, that is already a really good end result. If you watch the way you take this off, you see how I kind of rolled that back real gently and slowly. That allows air to enter at the top. Instead of fluid rolling out at the bottom, it all runs down the hose into the bag. There, realistically, at this point, there is no air in the system. If there's any, it's just a tickle. I'm going to show you how to get rid of that too. Two very important things while bleeding these brakes. One, when you fill the fluid for the final time, do not overfill it at all, okay? I will typically actually leave it just a little short of that max line. I'm going to explain to you why here in a second. If you overfill this and cap it up and seal it off, remember when the fluid gets warm, there is some expansion, okay? So you can see when I said short, I'm talking just a little bit short, not a ton, just a little bit short. There needs to be a pocket of air inside that reservoir for this system to work properly. If you overfill it, it heats, it expands. When the caliper pistons need to come back, the fluid's got nowhere to go. It's a mess. You don't want that. So just remember, never overfill your brake fluid. Now, you want that lever perfect. We want all the air going. We want perfect feel. Okay, get 2 cable ties, right? And this is going to serve 2 purposes. One, it's going to help you leak check your system, because remember, we had this thing torn apart big time. This ABS project, this is even a little different than a standard race bike. When I get that lever pumped up nice and firm, you don't need to go crazy with it. Just let that sit. Let it sit for a few hours. Let it sit overnight. So for the air, if there is any air in there, remember, that's going to want to rise to the top. So just sitting here with that lever, that allows that to flow up into the reservoir. Okay, this is a trick that I've used for a long time, and it works really good. It works great when the bike's sitting in a trailer, actually. Driving down to the racetrack, it shakes it up a little bit. The other thing is this affords you the opportunity to come back and inspect each one of these fittings individually and see if you have any seepage. Okay, now we're going to do the rear brake on the bike. A little simpler than the front. We only have 1 caliper to deal with, but still remember, we do have more distance to travel than we normally would because of the fact this motorcycle is equipped with ABS. We've got to get the fluid from the master up into the brake pressure modulator, back down the brake pipes, and then to the rear caliper. You could begin with some gravity bleed. I could put this on here, open the screw, and let it sit for a while until I have some movement in the fluid. Or we'll do the same thing that we did in the front. Open the screw, push the pedal, close the screw. And repeat this until we have movement. Keep an eye on your fluid level. And you know, I know where you could look at this if you're like, man, it's not doing anything yet. If the fluid level is dropping, which it is every time, it's working because we're filling the system. It was totally empty, okay? Popcorn fart level dryness. Do not let that empty all the way. I'm going to go ahead and top that off just a little bit, and we'll get this finished up. And there we go, see? Just like that. Now we can switch, we can start to pump, because we want to get that caliper piston extended all the way against the rotor. Hold it, open the screw, hold the pedal down, close the screw, and we'll repeat that process a couple of times until we have no air coming out of the bleeder screw. Okay, once again, left the fluid just a little short, okay? Probably could have went just a little higher, but at the end of the day, you should be servicing this stuff. And if your brake fluid's low, that means you need brake pads, brake service, regardless. So just a little short, a little paranoid about that. Now I want to hold the pedal down, right? Just like I did in the front. It's a little overkill. Let me show you how we're going to do that. Every bike would be a little different, okay, when it comes to this, because every bike's shaped different opportunities to hook this up. But I'll show you how I would do it on this R6. A little safety wire. This is something you should have. You got a sport bike, you should have safety wire in your toolkit. You should have safety wire pliers in your toolkit. Wind that around a little bit. Fold that over like so. Okay, got the wire on the bike. Bring that cable tie I just brought over. Get it started. And now you'll be able to push the pedal down. And this is going to allow me to do 2 things. Thing one, if there is any air left, this kind of helps it just float to the top magically. Also, I want to leak check every one of these fittings. This is a big job. We did a lot of stuff here. We had a lot of things apart, and you need your brakes to function properly. This isn't even my bike. This is Ryan's bike, so this thing needs to be perfect when it leaves the shop. So utilize, if you do this install on your R6, utilize these 2 tips to help you A, evacuate all the air, just even that last little microscopic bit, and B, leak check any fittings. One more step that I'm going to use there. It's going to look a little different for you if you don't have an air compressor, but I'm going to clean it up with a little suspension clean and a blowgun. Okay, back here in the manifold area, just going to spray that all down real nicely. This stuff is really pretty gentle, okay? Been all through that, love the Maxima. If you don't have an air compressor, get your old lady's hair dryer, use that, she won't mind. And I'll do the exact same thing up in the front. Remember, this is a lot gentler than standard brake clean. The brake clean, right, the hardcore stuff, can be kind of tough on some of these surfaces, and that's not something that we want. I am going to come in here and follow up in a couple of areas with like a little SC1 or a little speed wax after the fact. I'm going to do this basically everywhere. And when you're done, don't be afraid to give it a little final clean. This stuff is great on the surfaces. It's good practice, keep your bike nice and clean. But this will help just remove, you know, any of the suspension cleaner, any harsher cleaners. You want to follow up relatively quickly if you're using harsh cleaners at all on the bike with something like this. SC1's great, Speed Wax also great. Kind of do this mainly in the areas where we were working. Realistically, you need to clean it up anyway, so good practice to do that. And then follow up, of course, with a nice microfiber cloth. Put a little shine on it. Okay, yeah, it really was that simple. It was exactly the same thing. I think the coolest part, right, is this tip and this tip. Do those next time you do it. It'll help you leak check if you've serviced the system, which is nice because that's a peace of mind thing. If you know it's not dripping, you're going to feel really good about it when you ride it. You're going to worry less, for sure. And also, it just helps get out that last little bit of air so your end result is perfect. I'm Brian Van. Thanks for watching. Don't be afraid to subscribe to our channel. We really appreciate it. And this is how to bleed brakes on an ABS-equipped motorcycle.